Congratulations, Kieran, on your 150 subs. As I said, I had to participate in this one, but what I have to show is not going to be a surprise. So, this label is probably going to be picked by a lot of people who entered your contest, and this is my go-to label. And is it any surprise that it's Blue Note? It shouldn't be. I mean, Blue Note just reigns supreme. I mean, don't get me wrong, Impulse, Prestige, Verve, Columbia, Riverside, they all did great stuff, but you know, in terms of artistic quality and quality of the recordings, the overall product put together, no one can beat Blue Note at all. So to start this out, if no one has seen this documentary, I highly recommend it. I'm going to include a link below because it is out on YouTube, so you don't have to buy it. You can watch it for free. So if you're not into jazz, or you know you're just kind of a casual person that wants to explore it, it's worth checking out this documentary. I mean, it's very interesting to hear about the history of the label. Going into its two founders, Francis Wolff and Alfred Line. I was getting the names transposed. The two German Jewish immigrants that immigrated over to the United States just slightly before the outbreak of World War II and started a jazz label. And Francis Wolff doing the photography, it's just been iconic ever since. And this 90-minute documentary really goes into it, and it talks with a lot of the jazz musicians that were recording. So this documentary came out, I think, in the 90s, so a lot of the folks that you see in the film are no longer with us today, but it's interesting to hear their perspective. They also have some Blue Note collectors, so Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he has a few segments in it. So I recommend it if you're a casual fan. If you're just into music history, definitely check this out. So, I'm only going to go with 10 albums. I have a lot more Blue Notes, and I don't want this video to go on forever. But even my Blue Note collection, yeah, it's probably only a fraction of what is out there. I am predominantly interested in a lot of the hard bop and bop stuff that was coming out in the 50s and the 60s. I do have some funk and soul stuff from the 70s, and I do have some stuff that skirts on the freer side. But predominantly what I'm really into is the hard bop and bop era from the 50s and the 60s. And I have a tendency to go towards more of the bluesy type stuff. So I grabbed 10 albums from my collection, which I think are essential, and for anyone that's just getting into jazz, I think you're going to find that the music that I'm going to feature is really accessible and something that you might enjoy. So I tried not to repeat a single artist, so I've said it more often than not that I love Art Blakey, and I could show like 10 albums just on Art Blakey alone. So to mix it up, I went with one album per artist as a leader. Now, some of these artists are, sidemen, but to kick this off, this is by far my most favorite Art Blakey album of all time, because of the title track. Because, there's been a lot of renditions of A Night in Tunisia, which is a Dizzy Gillespie tune. But Art Blakey just makes it so explosive. His drumming on this is just incredible. And Art Blakey did a lot of drum records with, congos and, incorporating other drummers. He actually uses Wayne Shorter and Lee Morgan and Bobby Timmons, Jimmy Merritt on this. And you can hear them also incorporating into the percussion, into the beginning and the end of the piece. So the other part that I like about this track itself is that you can hear Art Blakey interacting with the band. I mean, you can tell that the session was so good. And I mean, besides the title track, there's a lot of wonderful stuff on this album. There's a couple of Lee Morgan tunes, and there's also a Wayne Shorter tune on here that's just incredible. I like the tune Yama, so I can't recommend this enough. And the Wayne Shorter, Lee Morgan period with Art Blakey is probably my favorite period. The next item, a lot of folks claim is one of their top 5, top 10 jazz albums of all time, and I have to agree. It's Something Else by Cannonball Adderley. A lot of folks attribute this to Miles Davis, who was very early on with the Blue Note, but he came back and he did this album with permission from Columbia with Cannonball Adderley. This is a one-of piece, so Cannonball Adderley, this is the only album he did for Blue Note, but this also features Hank Jones, Sam Jones, and Art Blakey. And this actually came out before Kind of Blue, and folks like to have it as a companion piece. And yeah, Kind of Blue on Columbia, to me that's essential jazz, and that's one of my favorite Miles Davis albums of all time. So next up is probably the best known album by Kenny Burrell, which is Midnight Blue. Just an incredible jazz guitar album. He is, along with Grant Green, one of the more famous guitarists on Blue Note. So Kenny Burrell did a bunch of albums on Blue Note, as did Grant Green. Kenny Burrell did a lot of albums for other guys like Verve, but this I think is his masterpiece. One of the best tracks on here is Chitlin's Con Carne, which was actually redone by a lot of artists, including Stevie Ray Vaughan. And you know, Stevie Ray Vaughan's variant of Chitlin's Con Carne is Audiophile Dream. You'll hear that as a test of a lot of sound systems, but this is just fantastic. Next up, should be no surprise, John Coltrane's Blue Train. So this is a milestone album for John Coltrane. This is the only album that he did with Blue Note as a leader. There are a couple other albums where he's featured as a sideman. There's a great album with Johnny Griffin called The Blowing Session, which features him and I want to say Hank Mobley, and they have one track where they're all blowing together, so it's just incredible. But this is essential. So in terms of top 10 albums of all time, this would be one of them because of the title track. I mean, Blue Train, once you hear that intro, I mean, it's instantly recognizable. And for me, this is one of the most accessible albums in terms of John Coltrane's catalog. For me, this is right before he got into his freer stage with Impulse. It also features Lee Morgan, Curtis Fuller, Kenny Drew, Paul Chambers, and Philly Joe Jones. So with that lineup, you just cannot go wrong. So the other jazz guitarist that I was mentioning outside of Kenny Burrell was Grant Green. Grant Green did quite a few albums with Blue Note, even going into the 70s. For me, this is the milestone album to pick up, which is Idle Moments. And, you know, if there is one track that is just incredible, it's the title track, Idle Moments, which was written by Duke Pearson. Idle Moments is, you know, to me it's analogous to those, you know, those iconic songs like Stairway to Heaven or Mozart's Requiem Mass. If you only wrote that one piece in your life, I mean, your fate was sealed. I mean, you were going to be going down in history as like an important musician. And you know, unfortunately, Idle Moments is not known, and it's just amazing because the track is just so beautifully written. So you know, if you're gonna sample one track of this entire album, which is excellent, check out Idle Moments. A very slow bluesy tune that, you know, that easily it lets you just melt away. It's incredible. So I can't recommend this album enough. So this also features Bobby Hutchinson, Joe Henderson, Duke Pearson, as I mentioned, and Bob Cranshaw. So yeah, I highly recommend this one. Now, unfortunately, the Music Matters folks have not gotten into a lot of the organists, and I showed this one on a previous video, and I'm hoping that Music Matters will feature Jimmy Smith. Jimmy Smith has just done hundreds of albums, but in terms of his Blue Note catalog, to me this is the best one. So this is Midnight Special, features Stanley Turrentine, Kenny Burrell, and Donald Bailey. This is again with back to the Chicken Shack. These two albums, or those two albums, were actually done at the same time. So if you want a bluesy organ with a little bit of swing to it, you can't go wrong with this guy. And this is the Analog Productions redo of this. And Analog Productions did a couple of Jimmy Smith albums, but nobody has really touched him so far. And again, I'm hoping Music Matters will issue this guy. So another one that Music Matters has not issued, but Classic Records did. Sonny Rollins Volume 2 with the iconic cover featuring Francis Wolff photography. This photo has been replicated by different artists, including Joe Jackson, which you can see here. Joe Jackson was a big fan of this particular album, and just look at that lineup. J.J. Johnson, Horace Silver, Thelonious Monk, Paul Chambers, and of course Art Blakey. So, you know, Sonny Rollins did about 4 or 5 albums with Blue Note, and to me this is the best one that he did. My favorite trumpeter of all time, Lee Morgan, and Search for the New Land. So this is where Lee Morgan got a little more experimental. He did a number of albums with Blue Note, but this is by far my personal favorite. I do like Sidewinder quite a bit, so I was kind of hemming and hawing, should I grab Sidewinder or should I grab this? But you know, the title track, Search for a New Land, is just incredible. Check it out. This again has an incredible lineup. So Wayne Shorter, Grant Green, Herbie Hancock, Reginald Workman, and Billy Higgins. So highly recommend this one. So the first album that Music Matters ever released as a reissue was Soul Station by Hank Mobley. This is by far my most favorite work by Hank Mobley on Blue Note. He did a number of albums with Blue Note, but this by far is my favorite anyway. And look at this lineup. You got Art Blakey, Wynton Kelly, and Paul Chambers. This is the 45 RPM edition of this album. They also did 33 RPM just last year. Little more accessible, so highly recommend picking this up. And the last thing that I had to grab, again, I tried not to think about this too long, so I just went through and tried to grab 10 which I thought were phenomenal, which I have a tendency to go back to. Horace Silver, Song for My Father, title track, again, very iconic. You listen to it, and you listen to, I think it's Ricky Don't Lose That Number by Steely Dan, and you can see that Horace Silver influenced Steely Dan, so you hear that intro. And no, it's not Ricky Don't Lose That Number. No, it's a Song for My Father. So incredible work by Mr. Silver. This one just happens to feature Joe Henderson, Teddy Smith, and Roger Humphreys, and Carmel Jones on trumpet. I love a lot of Horace Silver's work, and again, I was trying to think Tokyo Blues, this one, and I had to go for this one. So again, that's my list of 10. You ask me tomorrow, I might change my mind, except on the Art Blakey one and something else. But yeah, those 10 I have a tendency to keep going back to, but I have a bunch of other ones that I do as well. So there you have it. Kieran, just to get back to you, I love the t-shirt. Happy to be entered into the contest. I'm going to pick up a t-shirt anyway because I thought it was a cool idea and I love it. So congrats on the 150 subs. I know you're going to get a lot more. Love the blog. Keep it up, and look forward to more videos.